You are listening to The Learning Curve with Miss Taleen. This is a space where you can feel empowered to think about education differently.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of The Learning Curve. Today, I am talking with my wonderful and inspirational and incredible dear friend, Margaret Wassner. She is finishing up her 42nd year in education and is actually retiring in just a couple of weeks here. So there's a lot to learn from her. You can get a lot of insight talking about the pendulum of education, how things have changed, what things have stayed the same, what we can do to keep inspiring kids to want to learn and to be their best selves. So listen in, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. I loved it so much. Thanks. Well, hi, Margaret. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Taleen. It's my pleasure.
I'm so happy to have you. And I feel like this is one of the easiest ones to do just because we talk all the time. So I feel like the conversation will just go.
Let's just talk. Let's just talk. Let's
tell me about everything.
Girl education talk.
Yeah. It's what we do like 75% of the time.
Exactly. On text, on the phone, and in person.
That's right. So, because not everybody knows you. Lots of people know you, but not everybody knows you. Can you introduce yourself and tell us how you are involved in the education field?
Okay. Well, I'm Margaret Wassner, and I've known that I wanted to be a teacher since I was 15 years old. And my best friend took me to his mother's 5th grade summer school class, and they were doing a project. I don't even remember what the project was, but I mean, we're talking decades ago. And I thought, if I can't go to Broadway and be a star, which I'd love to, but the chances of that are kind of minute, I sure would like to be on stage permanently for a captive audience of 10-year-olds instead.
It is a lot like performing.
It really is. I call myself an edutainer because that's kind of what we do. So I decided I wanted to pursue that. But first I was a theater major until you had to actually declare a major and get a degree in something.
Yeah.
Just for fun, because I really wanted fun.
Yeah.
And it has actually served me well. That theater minor has served me well because I'm still involved in theater, and because I am an edutainer. We really do entertain the children and anyone that we're helping all the time.
That's so true.
So I went to school and I got my degree in liberal studies. I missed a lifetime credential by 1 year, meaning that had I graduated a year earlier, I would have been able to never have to renew my credential, which would have been cool.
That would have been cool. Saved a few bucks along the way, but whatever.
Whatever. And then I started teaching. I started teaching in Inglewood Unified School District in Inglewood, and loved it. And started off in kindergarten and graduated to the 1st grade.
What a step.
There's
a huge difference between kinder and 1st grade, though, as far as kids go.
And then the school that I worked at went K-8, and they had electives in the afternoon. So I switched back to just kindergarten, and I taught morning kindergarten. And then here comes the theater. And then afternoon, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade drama. And for 5 years, we put on productions, and I taught them drama, and we did theater exercises. And that was super fun because it was an elective. Mm-hmm. So the only pubescent beings that I had to teach were ones that actually wanted to be there and learn what we were doing, instead of just dealing with pubescent beings.
Right. Forcing everybody to do the thing that they might not
want to do. So that was great. And then I moved to the Antelope Valley because my best friends said that someone was starting a fine arts magnet up here, a friend of his that he had met at a conference. So he goes, "Do you want to go with me and see what it's all about?" And I said, "Sure." To the desert. Okay, whatever. So I did. And we moved because it was an incredible vision of a fine arts magnet where we taught regular, and then at about an hour and a half before school ended, the whole school rotated to some sort of art. There were recorders over here, and there was choir over here, and there was painting over here. There was drama. That was me over here. There was dance over there. And this man hired people with expertise in one of the arts
That's so cool.
or the others. It was perfect. My job in Inglewood was perfect with the afternoon drama. My job in here was perfect until that man stayed 2 years and then left.
No,
I know. He left. He went on.
that hurts.
That
That hurts.
And then the school reverted to just a regular school. It was no longer a fine arts magnet. But I owned a home. I'd met a guy. I was starting a family. So
Yeah, so your roots were in.
Yeah,
and here you are in the desert.
It was it. And I was at that school for 27 years. And in that 27 years, I taught kindergarten through fifth grade. I never had a fifth grade class, but when we did the rotating, I had the fifth graders. And I really loved it. I made really good friends. It was wonderful until it wasn't. It was wonderful until the big pendulum swing of test scores, blah, 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 happened, which was about 15 years ago, where those became be and end all. And I was already a project-based sort of a teacher, where we would do projects, we'd do theater. We learned the history of the Antelope Valley in the third grade through a musical that I wrote. And we spent a long time on it, and it was wonderful. And then we were called on the carpet always with the test scores, and I was in an extremely kind of underprivileged demographic where kids didn't go to preschool. They came with very little books in their hands. I mean, and so we were playing catch up from the moment they hit kindergarten. And it just was kind of not fair to standardize test scores in that demographic with, say, Beverly Hills. So right. So it was so disappointing to me to be told, stop teaching social studies and science and the arts, and spend your entire day on reading and math so that we can get these test scores up. Well, you know that no child comes back to you after they've graduated and they see you in the store and say, wow, thank you so much, Mrs. Wassner, for getting my test scores up.
Yeah, absolutely.
They say things like, oh, I remember that project we did on the Antelope Valley, and I played a pioneer. Or do you remember when we made gloop in class and we went down to the kindergarten class and shared it with them? Or do you remember the breakfast with moms that we made, but first we learned about solids, liquids, and gases, and then we explained it to our parents? They always said things like that. They never said, oh, remember when we practiced the state test for 3 hours a day and didn't do anything else but reading and math? And they don't say that because that's not valid to anybody except for the statisticians. So I got super disappointed, especially when the experts came from outside to get our school's test scores up and told us not to teach anything but reading and math. And I said at the time, I go, well, okay, supposing you don't like vanilla ice cream, and now you're told you must serve only vanilla ice cream to these children that don't like vanilla ice cream. What, we're going to force them to like it? Or do we also offer chocolate and Neapolitan so that they have a reason to come to school instead of getting a double dose of what they don't like?
Absolutely.
So I got super disappointed, and I one I love telling this story. One of spring break, when I was kind of at the edge of my
Like a
I was
breaking point
yeah, I
almost.
was I
Yeah.
was I was on the edge. I was a donkey on the edge. Um, I sat down on my steps in my house and just cried. And it was spring break. I'm going, what is going on? I just cried. I cried and cried and cried and thought, well, this isn't good. Life is too short. I was only 54 years old. So I could have retired and made almost nothing in my retirement, which was going to be a better option than being a puddle of tears on my steps during spring break.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mental well-being is a big thing.
Or I could have found an atmosphere that better suited what I knew was good for children and my particular style of teaching. So I wiped my tears and blew my nose, and it was a mess, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And got in the car, and there was an advertisement on the radio, and it said, do you want your children to not be worried about test scores? Do you want science and arts and that it was a great commercial.
You're
because
like, God, is that you?
Yeah.
In my radio?
God, it's me, Margaret. So, so the commercial went on, and I said, yes, that's what I want for my child or my classroom children. So I called the number that was on the radio. And the first thing I asked was, do you pay into California state teacher retirement system? Because I hadn't put in all those years and was going to ruin my retirement. And they said, yes. And so I visited the school, and a friend of mine who used to work at the old district was the first person I saw. She had left to go to that school. It was
That's so funny.
our kindergarten teacher, Kim Lingling. And
Kim Lingling.
yeah, love her. And then very project minded,
Yes, she is.
yeah, which is why she had to leave also.
Yeah.
So I started working there, and it was a struggle because there was no curriculum. Project base is you make up a project that's standard based, and you find the things to push into it to teach your children. But no one ever said don't do science and social studies and don't pay attention to the test scores, because we want to teach the whole child socially, emotionally, and we want them to be well-rounded, and we want to promote beauty in society, and we want to be project-based. And so I went, and that was a wonderful switch for me, and I've been there ever since. However, in 2 weeks, my 42 years in education will be through, and I will be a completely retired person. So that's
Kind
me.
of.
Kind of. It's always kind of with me.
Always good.
I retired from the classroom 6 years ago so I could help new teachers and help teachers in general assimilate into our iLead project-based atmosphere, because it's huge. We have open concept. There are no walls. People are running around. It's loud. Yeah, there's messes everywhere because people are creating and making. And that's hard to get used to, especially if you came up in the same kind of school system that I did. So,
right.
So I went to new teacher support, which has been delightful. However, I want to be delighted in different countries now.
Living your life
I want
in
to
retirement.
I want to do that, but it's been a wonderful career. I'm a little verklempt that it's over, but I've loved it. I've loved it. I believe, I truly believe that really good teachers, it's a calling, like the ministry or anything else. You are called to teaching. It's an art form. It's rocket science. It's everything else, but you have to care deeply, love children, and be called to try to help them.
Yeah, that passion that needs to be in there, that fire.
Yes,
when you get excited about something that you're going to bring to a classroom or to different teachers, it's like,
even if you're not excited, like it's really hard for me to get excited about fractions, but boy, if I can pretend to be excited and make them excited about it, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And that's where the entertaining comes in too,
Yes.
So you're like, I love fractions. Don't love fractions, but I love pizza. Yes. And we can make this work.
Exactly. So, yeah. Exactly. That's it. That is it.
Yeah. You touch on so many points, and like, for me, you're inspirational because you've been in the field for so long. I see that fire and passion inside you. I see you balancing it with your regular life. And it's interesting because it takes a while for teachers to get used to leaving, to being able to live their life and teach, because it's so all encompassing. But you've had so many irons in the fire. Like, you work and then you perform and then you're very active and you travel all the time and you're just everywhere all the time. And it's amazing. And so I'm like, maybe I'll be like her one day when I grow up. Well,
you got to get rid of your little kids first.
Yeah, they kind of dampen it sometimes, but lately you're able to just kind of bring them along and then see what they can hang with, and then, just test the boundaries.
Well, 10 years ago, when I was a puddle on my stairs weeping because I just couldn't do it anymore, I saw children in the house. That's something else that just adds to the stress of it. Nobody, I think, unless they do it, know, first of all, what it's like to be a teacher, at least a good one. Nobody really knows. The old adage is, well, you have summers off. Really?
But you kind of don't.
You kind of don't have summers off, and you kind of are always thinking. Even, I was at Petroglyphs National Park camping. And went, oh, wait a minute. Well, we could do this or I could share this, or here, let me take a picture of this.
Because you're finding inspiration in everything that you do. And you're always like, I wonder if I could just bring this back. So with that thought in mind, I want to go back to something that you and I talk about a lot. And we're kind of in the mode of it right now, which is testing.
Yes.
And test scores. And
my favorite topic.
And that pendulum that swings. And then when you have educators that are super passionate about their calling, their job, they want to bring that creativity into the classroom and they want to do these things. I mean, I like to believe that there is some way to marry that creativity and that need for test scores or whatever. Like, if you can do one, then you can do the other. But I don't know, like, can you speak to these swings that you've seen in education?
Wait, let me tell you, in the last 42 years, there's been so many swings of so many pendulums that you get motion sick. I mean, you really do. Case in point is just reading instruction. When I was coming up through school and taking my methods courses on reading instruction, it was all phonics, and these certain ways to do phonics. And then it went to like whole language within 5 years. And it was like, don't teach phonics, teach whole language. And said, well, not everybody learns by phonics and not everybody learns by whole language. And then it was open chord. And then it was, we have just been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And what I have discovered in my wisdom of just living through it all is nothing's the right way and nothing's the wrong way. But moderation in everything, diet, exercise, in moderation in anything is really where it's at.
And so consistency. You just have to do it. You just have to do it. And
you have to be ready for someone to not grasp a concept the way that you're teaching it. You have to be able to pivot, especially so you can't totally buy into one end of the pendulum or the other. Well, the same with testing. Testing, I get it. funding, and you got to hold people accountable. And you really do, because not everybody is passionate or ethical in the teaching world. They're thinking, I get my summers off, I get a pretty good salary and a banging retirement, instead of, oh, what a privilege to teach these little children. They're thinking the other end. So you have to hold people like that accountable to be ethical.
Yeah.
And testing, if there was a way to measure, like the poor interns that are going through their Cal TPAs, where they have to record themselves and they get check off on, well, you did this, but you didn't engage the children.
Right.
If there was a way to put a little camera in and watch the children and see if they're learning, rather than a statistical test score that is in an unnatural setting and makes the kids crazy, that would be the way to go. But of course there isn't. That's just not practical. So I wish, here's the deal. When I when I moved here, the man, Rex Comer, bless him, who was starting the fine arts as magnet out here in the desert, in the middle of the poorest neighborhood ever.
Yeah.
He said he wrote his doctoral thesis on basically learning through the arts. And he said that if you give the children something to want to go to school for, just putting them in their seats and giving them a passion makes them want to learn the adjunct things.
Yes.
And
that's 100% right.
And if you concentrate on the adjunct things, your test scores will naturally go up. So you have this thing you got to do, but let's do the stuff that kids are passionate about to get them there. And our school was supposed to be doing that with the project-based learning.
Yeah.
If you do project-based learning correctly, and you actually think, what are the standards that I'm addressing? What am I trying to accomplish? And what are the steps to get to the end result of this project? Then I think you're addressing the test, because, well, I think the test is poorly written. It's not. It's written by not people that know anything about children, I think, but you're addressing at least the standards for a grade level that are supposed to be accomplished. So there's got to be a way, a different way, rather than test practice.
Yeah. The fact that the test is so high stakes is the part that bothers me.
Yeah,
Like, not
me
testing
too.
it within itself. Like, I think that's helpful, like a helpful barometer. When we do our in-house testing and we're analyzing the data and it gives us the strands of like what they need to practice and what they need to do, I consider that a helpful teaching tool. That tells me that these kids are struggling with like algebraic functions, but are doing really well with geometry. So then I know I can, hone in on these particular topics and then use that as a teaching tool. But if I had somebody breathing down my neck going, why aren't they getting algebraic functions? And you suck as an educator because of it. You're just kind of like, oh my God, like, hold on. And you change the whole paradigm. Like, now it's a stressful situation where something could have been a teaching tool or just an informational thing has now become what gets people fired sometimes, or just really burns out that.
And that was
passion.
what crumbled me on my stairs that one spring break a decade ago. That's what brought me literally to my knees, because I couldn't take that anymore. I think it's a form of cruelty to teachers, and it's certainly a form of cruelty to the children. And aren't we supposed to be about children?
That was the point, I think.
Are we supposed to be about that? That's what we're supposed to be about. So
yeah. And the other thing that I've noticed, like, I'm thinking about the state testing that I used to do as a kid growing up. That was way more palatable. They were shorter periods of testing, first of all. It was on paper still.
I was going to say it's two-dimensional, which I think makes a total difference. Also,
huge difference. And I didn't feel like I was getting tricked as much. And now as I'm like, I look over my own children's shoulders while they're taking the in-house test. I really do try to walk away so that I can get a clear read on what they're doing instead of my interfering. But like with the kids at school too, if they're taking that state testing from 3rd to 8th grade, and I'm looking over their shoulder and I'm seeing how these test questions are written, it's complicated. These are convoluted questions.
Like I
It's
said,
a
the
it's a
people that
whole
write them.
yeah, it's a whole different language that they're speaking. So in a way, I feel like you have to teach them separately. Like test prep is a separate subject.
Mhm.
It is so disheartening to me that it's not even like
And what a waste
related
of
to the things that you're supposed to be teaching during the school day anyway.
Right.
It's like an additional subject now that we have to be like, well, the test wants you to say X, Y, and Z. So we're going to need you to say X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how to address something like that. Like,
Well, the
other than
last
to,
thing I want to be told though is, you're just, how do we get these test scores up? Instead of, how do we develop a better project? Or how
inspire
do
these
we
kids to want to learn.
Right. How do we get school kids to come to school and want to come to school? How do we develop lifelong learners? Certainly not with test prep. We're develop lifelong test takers, not lifelong learners. So I've reached my point of frustration again.
Because we're at that part of the pendulum.
We're at the test score pendulum part. So I've reached the end, so it's a really good time to retire.
Yeah, and this works out timing wise. Like this is an opportune time.
Instead of 10 years ago when it would have been too soon.
Yeah.
This is just fine with me. I don't see myself giving up education totally. Like I hope to still be an inspiration to
well, you will.
some people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sad. It's sad. And I also I think things are changing, not to be an old curmudgeon, but I think that maybe kids' brain firing system is changing by looking at screens so much, because unless it seems to me that in the classrooms that I visit, that unless the teacher has instant gratification either on a screen or some other way, but mostly on screens, because we even have smart boards in classrooms now. Then the kids are not engaged. Like they're not going to sit down and play a card game that has an educational value when they can get a reward of an exploding pizza on a screen or something. It just, things have changed.
I remember I was sitting and observing one of our facilitators a couple weeks ago, and she was trying to teach something that was posted up on the smart board.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kids all had their Chromebooks, and then they also had like their cell phone out, and they had a worksheet that they were supposed to fill out. And I just saw this like triangulation. Basically, they like look at the smart board to fill out the paper, and then they look at their Chromebook, and then they look at their phone. And I don't think that they were on any of those tasks for longer than like 10 seconds at a time. They
Instant
kept switching it off.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, holy guacamole, I think we're giving these kids some form of ADHD because we're perpetuating it by the way that we're teaching the kids right now. And I know we're in an age of technology and that they're going to need to learn how to function and maneuver in a world that is the thing. But there's a part of your childhood and your brain development that I feel like you have to make these connections, these neural connections, and all these critical thinking skills that come along. And this is almost like a drug.
Yes.
Like,
Oh, I totally agree.
Given to them too soon and too much.
Yes.
to just maybe dial it back and to go back to the tangible things that they can do. When you play a card game with a person or a board game with a person, or you have those, you're forced to have conversations with them. You're forced to problem solve with them. You're forced to accept defeat outside of this individualized screen. Like if you're defeated in a video game, that's one thing. But if you're defeated among 5 players, like you have to figure out how to make that work for you and how you're going to show your face and like what's going to happen. And all of
Exactly.
these soft skills that you're supposed to develop, these pieces of technology are so isolating.
I
And
totally agree. I totally agree.
it's so hard because I know the benefits and the powers of technology and all the things that it can bring and aid in a classroom. But man, I gotta say, I'm not totally mad at the facilitators who don't want to incorporate it nearly as much in their classes. Like I think that that's actually beneficial to the kids a lot of the time, but man.
Man,
Yeah.
I agree. I think that science will prove that we are truly changing the neurological patterns of children. I think that will be coming out. And like I said, ADD, instant gratification, it's so different. It's so different.
Yes. And especially when you have these formats, like I even fall victim to it because I love them, like TikTok videos or whatever, that are these 30-second, 60-second clips of something. If something lasts longer than that, it is so hard to maintain someone's attention beyond that. It's like they're being trained to have this very short attention span. And that's so disheartening to me. And it's also like, well, how do I use it as an educator to try to like make a point, but like really quick, and stuff.
Right.
But you can't be thorough that way.
And I think some things need slow and careful thought, slow and careful thought. I went into a classroom of someone that I was supporting, and this is middle school, and they were all on their computer. And I asked the facilitator, your listeners know that we call teachers facilitators in our world.
We always can clarify just because there might be listeners for the first time on our episodes. So
yeah. So there was a facilitator who was just sitting at his desk, and everyone was on their computer. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is like a nightmare movie to me. like where nobody's relating to anyone. Everybody's just relating to a screen. And I said, it was an English lit class. And I said, so what book are you reading? And he goes, oh, they're on, I don't know, Get Epic or some website where the books were on the screen. I said, so you're not going to like read a book together and go into it? Or, I mean, they're trying to get prepared for high school, so are you doing that? No, they're all on their own book. So I just kind of snuck around and looked at their screens as to what they were reading. They weren't reading any books.
Yeah.
And because he was in his seat, he had no idea. However, if they were all holding a book, like a series of unfortunate events or something that they had to hold and turn pages to and take turns reading and talk about in groups, then maybe they would be engaging with literature and the printed word rather than playing Minecraft. I saw that going on. I saw someone on YouTube with music videos with headphones on.
I see that all day, every day.
Yeah.
All the time. There are some facilitators who are way better with it, where they really monitor what the kids are doing. And then if they're not doing something that they're supposed to be doing, then they turn it off. And then they also limit the amount of time that the kids are on a screen like that, right? But then there are the ones that take it as an opportunity to give themselves a break or,
It's
Just
lazy.
kind of be lazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
lazy.
and it allows you to do that. Now, I find myself as a parent sometimes leaning on a screen so that I can go do my own thing or take a minute or take a beat.
Well, that's not lazy, that's sanity.
Yeah. And so that's what that was my point. Like sometimes there is a need for it, and sometimes the selfish need is necessary, because if your mindset is not right and you need those few minutes, but you just can't lean on it forever all the time, because
And it
you're
becomes
going to
a
be
habit.
creating a monster.
Right.
And I just want to be very conscious of that. And then we have all these educators entering the classroom for the first time now.
Yes.
And
this is all they know.
yeah.
This is all they know. I'm
want
a visitor.
to inspire them to do other stuff. And I'm just kind of like,
which is why I believe it is so important that our industry keeps project-based, hands-on activities alive and well. We still do projects and at our school, but it's always disappointing to me when the children choose to have their projects on a screen. Yeah. I like to see when they've built stuff. Like recently we went into a 4th grade class and the facilitator had the entire room done in cave paintings. They were studying the Chumash tribe, which that's what project base is all around. About not one of them was reading about cave paintings from a screen in that particular class.
Yeah, and that's a big deal.
And that made my heart happy. That really made my heart happy. I think that we're not everything is going to be a graphic design when these kids grow up and enter the world. Somebody is going to have to do something with their hands.
Absolutely.
So that we need to nurture that part of kids' brain development too, that there's
something about these tangible things that happen that can help really solidify a thought or be more exciting or something. Like it's just more helpful.
Right.
Sometimes. And then I was thinking yesterday, like we had to go to an event that my kids had to sit quietly at for a long period of time.
Oh, they can't, can they?
It was very hard, and they did their best, but they're 5 and 7. So they, they're antsy and they're doing these things. And then we had a pretty long walk back to the car. And so we're going, screen free for X amount of time. We are in a place where it would be rude to pull something out. It would, and so I had a little magnetic checkerboard and we were just playing like little magnetic checkers or whatever quietly, like over here. But then I was noticing I was walking behind them as they were walking in front of me back to the car. And kids have this natural ability to turn everything into a game. And to just make things more fun than just sitting there. Like that is not the thing. And so then I thought, as educators, again, like we're walking back to the car, but everything connects to education for me. Like in my head, I'm like, as educators, we need to know that about kids, like really understand that about kids. And when we ask them to come in and to maybe just do a pile of paperwork, that's not the way to do it either. Right. You have to meet them where they're at. And by saying that, I mean, you have to adjust your instruction to meet kids where kids' heads are at that point. If a 5 and 7-year-old want to gamify a worksheet, there are ways to do that. Like you can just do, or you can just make things more tangible for them or exciting for them or fun for them. That's the thing that's going to get them wanting to be a lifelong learner, When
I was helping a new teacher at the beginning of this year, and she was trying to complete her TPAs. So I was filming her. So this was even a lesson that she thought she had planned out well. And it was a 1st grade class, and they were doing a worksheet. This is what she wanted to film. And it was a worksheet that was above most of their levels. And it was boring and there weren't any pictures. And they're little babies that can't even really write yet.
Yeah.
So I sat down with her and I said, so if you were 6, would this be fun for you?
Yeah.
I said, was it fun for you as a as a teacher right now? I go, because watching it, I wasn't having a good time, and notice the behaviors. If you are engaging the children, of course your behavior, you have good behavior in your classroom.
Yeah.
And any good teacher worth their weight knows
Yeah.
that if you have procedures that are consistent and engaging lessons and true relationships with your children, then you will not have behavior problems.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 of the kids are going to be right there with you in lockstep. The families are on your side. Everything's great. You're always going to have the couple handfuls, but
Right.
whatever. Like
everybody does.
Yeah, it's doable and you can make it work.
You just can't say, well, they just don't pay attention. No. What you have to say to yourself is, I am not making them pay attention because what I am doing is not fun or interesting.
And it's one of those things where you go back to the thought process, like how much of this is in my control and what isn't in my control. I cannot make them sit down and do paperwork for 30 minutes and be excited about it at 6 years old. I can, however, adjust my teaching in order to engage them more and probably win them over that way and see if that works. Like you just have to adjust your approach and then it makes it better. Like it's just a bigger thing.
And if they know you love them, then that's half the battle.
Really?
Like, yeah. If they know that you love them, that you love kids, that you are enjoying being there, then they're going to love you back and also enjoy being there.
Yeah. And they're going to want to work with you and work through the tough things with you. And, you know, they know that you're there. Yeah. That's a big deal. I think that that's what it boils down to.
I knew it was time for me. And I knew I knew I would know when it was time to get out of the classroom when I started getting grumpy.
Being self-aware is really helpful.
Yes, like, yeah. Oh man, yeah, I love you, kid, but just sit down. It's really just sit down. So I knew, okay, I'm not as patient and as understanding as I used to be, and it might be time to go. Might be time to get out of the classroom and do something else. I was really grateful for that. And it was time to go. And it wasn't actually the kids that I was impatient with. It was their parents. I wanted to say to their parents, look I've been doing this a really long time. I know what I'm talking about. But,
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was time. It was time to go. If you stop feeling that innate joy of walking into the classroom, time to go.
Yeah, it's so important to be reflective on that. And sometimes it's not at retirement age that you come to that conclusion. Sometimes you realize maybe this isn't the thing that I was meant to do. Maybe I need to go do something else. Or it was the thing I was meant to do for a few years and I can't anymore.
Right.
You know?
With me, it was really 36 years in the classroom, though. I figured that was enough time.
That's a lot of time.
That's enough time.
That's a lot of time. Yeah. And the comparison in my mind, and this is not a retirement comparison, it's just a self-awareness comparison. So just keep that in mind. My dad's mom, my grandma, she was driving and one day she made a left turn out of a shopping center and she panicked mid-turn and just kind of stopped in the middle of the street. And then a bunch of cars were honking at her and then she kept driving. And she told me this story and then right after that incident, she stopped driving forever.
Yes.
Good. She was like
very self-aware.
Yes. And I think of that as an analogy for all things. Because I'm like, she realized without anybody having to sit her down or pry her keys out of her hands, she realized I can't do this anymore. This is not safe for me. It is not safe for the people around me. It's not safe for anyone I'm driving. Like, you know, we've got to stop. And she did. And she was so self-aware. And I always think that was a really awesome thing to do. And I try to take that lesson into other parts of my life and go, I
Right.
need to be self-aware in all of these areas without necessarily having to wait for somebody to come to me, hold me by the shoulder, sit me down and go, have you thought about this? And sometimes you
Well,
might need to do
and
that.
like you're young and you would still be extremely viable and patient and wonderful in the classroom, but in your coaching sort of capacity, perhaps you are reaching more lives. Perhaps you are even making more of an impact because it's not just limited to those 25 children. Not that that's not important,
No,
because
that's the
it's
hope.
super important.
That's the hope. And when I got to work with kids, when I had the opportunity to pull them and work in small groups with them, like that filled my soul
Yes.
like so much, and kids just bring something different to the table. But if you can help the adults that are helping all of these kids, then yeah, it's a further reach, I feel like.
I will
I hope.
I will miss the kids. I really will, because
Yeah.
I love going into the classrooms. Many of the children, I work for two schools. In those two schools, know me. Oh, Miss Margaret! I walk in and they run up and hug me, and I love that. And I'll sit down with some of them and talk to them, and they know that I'm there to help their facilitator.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm there to take over for their facilitator.
Right.
That's happened
That's part
quite
of
a
it
bit.
sometimes. Yeah.
That's happened quite a bit, but I will miss the kids and the camaraderie of working. But Paris is calling.
We
And I've earned Paris.
You sure did.
Yeah.
I might title this episode I've Earned Paris.
Indeed. For youngsters that are going into this profession, I cannot honestly encourage them to do this if I feel as if they do not have that spark or that passion or that calling. Please don't go into this profession.
Yes.
If you
preach.
do not go into this profession if you think it's just a extended summer vacation. Don't do it. Just do not do it. And also, you have to have a really strong fortitude of a personality to be a strong ego. You have to. You can't be sensitive, super sensitive, because it will kill you. It will kill you. You just have to have that it factor. And that, I found this out in my last 6 years of coaching newbies. That it factor, if it's not there, you can't make it be there.
Right.
You can't coach it into someone. You can give them techniques. You can give them tricks of the trade. You can help them plan. You can do all of that. But without that it factor, you cannot make it happen. It has to come from within. Teaching comes from within. So don't do it. Don't do it unless you have to. I would pretty much give that advice to all aspects of life. Don't get married unless you just can't imagine life without that person. Not just because it might be time to get married. Seems like it had some good benefits.
Right. Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it unless something within you is forcing you to do it.
Like there's no other, I was talking about that was the night like we were talking about like, what would you do if you didn't teach?
Right.
And we were stuck.
Yeah.
We were like, I don't know.
Well,
I think I can do other jobs well, but I definitely don't want to. And
well, when I was crumbled on my stairs during that spring,
we're gonna call it the crumbling.
the crumbling of Margaret. I thought, well, I can't do this, obviously.
Yeah. What
could I do? Well, at that point in my career, it was, year 32. I had put in so much into the retirement system that it would not have been fiscally beneficial. To do anything else. Like I could go work in an office or something and make a third of what I was making as a teacher at that point in my career. That didn't make any sense. My other option would be what I wanted to do in the first place, which was go perform. But
Yeah.
like that's going to happen at 55. I don't think so.
It might.
Well, you never know. But yeah, what else is there to do? We're not trained to do anything else. The training that we have for what we do is so intensive that to switch to something else, you'd have to really want to do that other thing.
Right. So the training part of it, that's the other thing we're noticing nowadays,
Yes.
is because there's a shortage, the bar's been lowered a little bit as far as who we allow to be in the front of a classroom. And we're noticing like you didn't get that intensive training. And it is as if you stepped into a marriage without even dating first.
Right.
Right.
Oh, this sounds like a good thing to do.
Right. And you had no idea, because I remember going through like my training program, and it was an intensive teaching program where I got my credential at the same time that I got my bachelor's. And I've been observing classrooms since I was 17 in a professional capacity where I had to write feedback and do all this stuff. And in the cohort of 50 kids that we had, handfuls of them were like, this isn't for me.
Right.
I know that. They changed their major, they went to a different school, or they dropped out of college altogether because that just wasn't for them. And that part is so important. Either it's going to ignite your fire more or it's going to blow it out. And I don't think some of these people that are coming in right now have that opportunity to feel that out for themselves.
Well, I went to Loyola Marymount University, and back then in 1980, after you graduated with your bachelor's, you had to do a half a year of postgraduate work with student teaching, and you were a quarter in a primary grade and a quarter in an upper elementary grade. And while that was going on, you were also taking methods courses.
Yeah.
So you had reading in elementary curriculum, math in elementary curriculum, science. You had all these methods courses you had to take, which those did nothing for me. I mean, if truth be told, it gave me a little bit of information.
It's the textbook version of,
what gave me a lot of information was student teaching with the master teacher, watching them and having them watch me. That was what really taught me. And that's also what made me realize I really do want to do this. I love these kids. I want to do this. So if you don't have any experience like that at all, I think you better rethink your life.
Yeah. Or be proactive and take those opportunities to go observe in schools, maybe, or sub a little bit and see how you feel about it. Even though subbing's a little bit different. I do think attaching yourself to a more experienced teacher, that you can glean an apprenticeship, right? It's so important, because then you have somebody to bounce ideas off of and work through questions and thoughts and things like that. Right. But yeah, going in blindly, like we've seen it happen a few times, especially in the last couple of years. And it's been a difficult thing to try to coach. And it's been a difficult thing to try to work with. And sometimes, they'll get more comfortable and the second year is better. And we have seen that sometimes, like the discomfort of a first year of teaching too. You have to take that into consideration. Yes.
It's a lot.
And so, I was actually talking to one of our facilitators that's in year 2 this year. And I know she felt like she struggled a lot the first year. And I comforted her. And I was like, look, especially when we started at this school that we're at right now, like I had a very uncomfortable first year here.
Me too.
I said, Margaret had a really uncomfortable first year here. Zenaida had an uncomfortable first year. We all went through the year where we were in tears and we're like, oh my gosh, did I make the right choice? I don't know what I did. And then, analyzing your teaching environment, realize whether or not that's a good fit for you. Because maybe you would do better in a place with walls and doors, or maybe you do better in a place where you collaborate with your colleagues and swap your kids so you can teach homogenized lessons or something like that, right? You can do all of these things. So just keeping that in mind. And so she was so much more comfortable with her performance this year. And we know that she's doing an amazing job.
I think I know who you're talking about.
And she like was so excited. Like it was my birthday like a couple days ago, and she like popped out the door and she like poked her head out and she's like, I just want to tell you that we've been doing really well. I was like, I'm so happy to hear that. And so then she also
said, and this is beyond the grade level she's teaching. She goes, I've taught some kids to divide.
Yes.
Wow. That's hard.
It is hard, especially at that age level. And you're just kind of like, well, good. She found her stride and the support is helpful and she found her bearings and she could do that. So there is, another side to this. But then if you're coming in blindly and you've had no experience and you have no passion for it, you're just giving it a shot. It's tough. Don't do it. Like don't do it. please don't stop.
Do it.
You're going to put us
know yourself. Know yourself.
Yes.
And listen to people.
Yes.
So we've been talking a lot.
Yeah. So we're nearing the end. And the last question I ask all of our guests is, I say our. I talk about like as if I'm more than one person. But I know you probably have a lot. What is one memory that comes to mind from your teaching or learning experience that causes you to laugh or brings you joy, or, it's just this uplifting memory?
Well, there's so many. Right. I mean, 42 years is a long time. However, this is not inspiring at all. This is just funny. This is just funny. Back in Inglewood, in my kindergarten class, when I was still young, I had like the cutest little guy in my class, smart as a whip. Derek Sagabi, if you're out there, I loved you so much. And
# Derek Sagabi.
Derek Sagabi is probably 45 or something, but he was this little tiny 5-year-old. And we were studying bees. It was springtime in kindergarten. We were studying bees. We were making bee things and wings, and we were going outside and seeing if we could find bees, and we were talking about, and we made things out of honey, and everything was bee. We were making bees out of the letter B. I mean, we were really into bees. And I said, now we don't want to kill bees because bees they're not really harmful. They're really helpful. And he says, well, that is not true. I said, what? He goes, that is not true. Look, I go, well, usually if you don't disturb the bees, they won't disturb. Not true. He said, one time we were in the garden. My mom, she wasn't doing anything to this bee, and it flew right up her skirt and stung her on the pom-pom. Okay, Derek, let me compose myself and then I will answer that.
On the pom-pom.
The pom-pom. So
that's a new title of the episode.
I've earned Paris. And
on the pom-pom.
What is a pom-pom to a 5-year-old? So I leave you with that. There's many more. Many more. I could write a book.
I love it so much. Well, thank you, Margaret,
thank you, my dear
today.
friend.
I had a great time, and I know that you've impacted thousands of people.
I hope so.
in your career, and you will continue to do so beyond your retirement, I'm sure. Well, and remain inspiring, and we are all lucky to have heard from you.
Well, thank you, my darling. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.